Nelly Sudri, or Ask Nelly, has been one of my least favorite content coach / content creators for a while. Although maybe it's not as much Nelly herself that I take issue with, but the value system that she operates from and promotes. A value system that I think does more harm than good to people and only serves to widen the gap between men and women today. Or maybe it's just the hint of vocal fry that I detect, which I have come to believe is the physical manifestation of someone who has become possessed by the spirit of materialism.
The power of Christ compels you!
The journey is usually the part that you remember anyways.
Now, I had a couple of popular TikTok videos a few years back where I disagreed with a clip or two of hers, but I haven't really paid her nor her audience any mind since then until this video popped up in my feed.
Of high value male, go for it.
Based on 4 pillars. Pillar number 1, financial success. The second, someone who's well groomed. Third, someone who's verifiable. And then networked. Those are the 4 criteria.
My problems with it particularly are a few things. One of them is what determines a high value man is all of the things that you've labeled, none of them are characteristics.
Like qualities, soft qualities.
Qualities, honesty, ambitious, hardworking, determined.
Because in order to rise to the ranks of, let's say, a Fortune 500 company, in order to consistently make $100,000 a year plus.
There's capacity. That's one level for men that they do need to have. And then there's also characteristics. And those characteristics are going to be far better, especially when it comes to mate selection, because you could take a very successful, well-networked, but he could be about as masculine as a raccoon.
Who's going to get more matches? Who has more leverage? Who has more bargaining power in the dating market? It is the first, not the latter.
What you're talking about isn't so much a dating market, more than it's a distortion of a dating market. Because if it was a dating market, people would be having children, getting married, engaging in long-term relationships. Now, what you're describing is short-term usage of other human beings through platforms that make people think they're high value when really they're just insecure.
So to be clear, the pillars of a high value man are status, fame, and fortune, a walking gold mine of external validation just waiting to be extracted. This definition of a high value man is just so detrimental to society and to the mentality of men and women alike, which is what we're going to talk about today.
I was gonna clean my room until I got high.
I can't help but notice the creators and coaches who promote and parrot such shallow narratives also profit off of all of the egocentric insecurities and superficial entitlement that it creates. Basically, make men feel angry and inadequate and then sell them rage bait content and pyramid scheme courses, cause the pain and sell the painkillers. But what about how Nelly defines a high value woman?
You'd ask me, what is a high value woman, right? Speaking with a lot of men, being cooperative, being agreeable, doesn't mean making yourself smaller. It means being a team player, right? It means letting a man lead you. Being feminine in your appearance and in your mannerisms. And also, again, I'm going to get some hate for this, I'm sure, but yeah, being in shape.
So basically, submissive, feminine, and fit. Sounds exactly like what you will hear from Fresh and Fit's Myron Gaines, the man who wrote a book called Why Women Deserve Less. It's also the same value metrics that you'll find in Shira Seven's content, which is just gold digging masquerading as women's empowerment, or guys like FitX Fearless, who claims that you are not a real man if you do not work 80 hours a week, make $50K a month, and have a 7-inch dick.
If you're making anything under $50,000 a month, you're not a man.
I hope you're picking up the gravity of what I'm exposing here. These people are all playing the same game from different angles. Creators like Nelly and Shira target the large numbers of women who feel entitled to all of the materialism and status the world and the top 10% of men provide and have to offer.
He loves me, I love money, I deserve to have money, I deserve to be wealthy. You have to start realizing you deserve this.
While creators like Fresh and Fit and FitX Fearless and all the other red pill grifters target the bottom 90% of men. Do you see what is happening here? These are huge audiences ripe for exploitation. So I guess Nelly's background in corporate sales comes in handy after all, because that's all this is. It is the commodification of relationships. And the more society sells men the idea that they need to be a millionaire, have a six-pack, and be 6 feet tall in order to be a real man worth a woman's desire and respect, and on the other side, sell women the idea that they deserve these real men and to live a celebrity lifestyle, and anything less means that she is settling for less than she is worth, the more these things happen, the more insecure, narcissistic, entitled, materialistic, superficial, individualistic society becomes. And we will continue to watch relationships continue their downward spiral into desolation, which is exactly what these types of creators profit on. Create the sickness and sell the cure. It's difficult to say if even Nelly herself is fully aware of what she is selling, but I don't think she is really as interested in questioning the system and its long-term consequences as she is in working that system for personal gain. Maybe she doesn't realize that her business model of matchmaking for high-value singles is really just a glorified prostitution ring. Pairing a handful of rich, high-status men with a Sears catalog of quote-unquote agreeable, feminine women who are specifically targeting rich, high-status men. You can boil the whole operation down to money for sex. There is lots of money to be made splashing around in the shallow waters and deep pockets of high-value dating in Miami, churning women through the gauntlet, just as there is lots of money to be made off the backs of the 90% of low-value men in society who spend too much time online. Think of it like this. Influencers like Nelly sell bottle service in the VIP section, while hustle culture creators sell overpriced entry into the nightclub, and Red Pill sells outrage to all of the men who don't meet the requirements to get in the club at all. The whole system is based on the idea that high-value people are popping bottles in the VIP and everyone else is low value. Kind of like how Andrew Tate calls his audience peasants. So if only the top 10% are high value, that means the remaining 90% of relationships are low value relationships between low value people. I'm sure you can imagine how that will begin to affect people's mentality who buy into this idea. 90% of people should feel worthless and ashamed of themselves. They should compare themselves and their partners to that top 10%. They should feel like they are not good enough, and their partner isn't good enough, and their relationships are not good enough. They should build idols of money, lust, fame, and fortune, thinking those gods will save them and finally cure this feeling of unworthiness. Or they will start to victimize themselves and cope with their anger and apathy by blaming women or blaming men. And all of this is by design. It is an inherently narcissistic system and perspective of life, love, and relationships, and anyone who feeds into this system becomes corrupted by it. Another thing I found funny in that interview was when Nelly called out Naftali for saying something she considered to be misogynistic, when her entire shtick and high-value worldview promotes the idea that high-value men are known by their accolades. They are valued for money and status and being more competent across the board than women, while the highest value a woman can attain is to be agreeable and sexually desirable. Men buy, women comply. The cruel irony. The sad part about that is there is objective truth to it. Your external attributes will absolutely increase your dateability more than anything else. Being good looking, high status, and wealthy will open a lot of doors and it will get you into a lot of rooms, but it is only your internal infrastructure that will build a home. And looking out into the dating scene, I see a lot of people without homes, living for the streets or giving up the idea of building a home altogether. I understand that there is a lot of other factors involved, but this is not a coincidence and it is not a drill. I think the value system that Nelly has built her brand on represents all that is wrong with dating and relationships in the modern world. It's backwards. It's not about love. It is not about sacrifice. It is all about what you can get and how you can leverage other people to get it. Now, I do not think that people are any more evil now than they have been before. It's not about modern women being parasites and modern men being incels. I think we as humans intelligently adapt to our environment to survive. We are all being exposed to an increasingly individualistic and antisocial environment, and in order to adapt to it, we are becoming increasingly self-centered and antisocial ourselves. But adapting sounds like a good thing, so let's replace that with mutating. The cluster B mutants of the modern world don't want love or to work to build relationships with people of good character. More and more people today believe the world is there to serve them. The entitlement of main character syndrome is contagious. A lot of people don't actually want successful relationships. They just want relationships with successful people. They want instant gratification and external validation above all else. Relationships and people are being turned into commodities to be consumed. And unfortunately, the exploitative nature of dating apps and hookup culture are a part of the beast. Like Naftali said, it's all a skewed and distorted version of dating and humanity that is not conducive to healthy, lasting relationships. Another way to look at it is to realize that it is an outside-in system of value rather than an inside-out system of value. It is important to differentiate the two because while both sides come to similar general conclusions, they are as inverted as heaven is to hell. Yes, both sides agree that God and the devil are real, but one side worships the Prince of Peace, while the other worships the Prince of Lies. It is no coincidence that this same inside-out system exists in mental health and behavior change as well. True change and character development is an inside-out process. People who operate from the outside in are more focused on surface behaviors than core stories and are far less capable of authentic and lasting change. One of the best resources out there that dives into this concept of internal versus external change is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Definitely worth a read. Nelly also says at one point that everything is just a perspective, but I say perspective is everything. And the problem for most people, especially for those who see through these superficial outside-in lenses of high value and low value, is that they are unable to see past their own egos and entitlement. It would be easier to walk a camel through the eye of a needle. In my experience, when you tell an emotionally stunted materialist that character qualities are more high value than money and that they are extremely entitled in their thinking, their brains short circuit and they start acting like you're telling them that they need to date broke people and live out their days in abject poverty. I have talked about the idea of high value men and women before. It's nothing more than an exposition of what you value. And let's be real. If you meet anyone who uses the term high value unironically in real life, you should start walking in the opposite direction. It is narcissistic to measure a person as high value by means of sex, money, and status. This means you care more about what people can give you than who they are. This is backwards. I'm not saying you can't have both, but what you place at the top and look for first exposes what you worship. If you place money, status, and sex appeal at the top of your value system, you don't belong in a committed, loving relationship. Your true loyalty is to money, sex, and status. Those are your gods. Such people cannot be trusted because they will only be around as long as they can extract what they worship. And if they can get more of it somewhere else, they will. And to argue that material success is a clear indicator of character quality is a fallacy. It's a justification, and it's foolish. It should be embarrassing to be drowning in the shallow end of a public pool as a grown adult. There is no shortage of wealthy, successful people who make for a terrible relationship investment. In the words of Kanye West, The prettiest people do the ugliest things for the road to riches and diamond rings.
Now, tell me that ain't insecure.
Nelly should know this firsthand more than most people, seeing as she operates in Miami. Big surprise. What I have learned from a few people who flirt with that lifestyle is that it is just a glorified harem, where women go to sell themselves and 99% of them get chewed up and spit out, albeit with a few more plastic parts and anxiety meds than they arrived with. But because they see those 1% winners and they've already drank the Kool-Aid, they just keep playing that slot machine, pun intended, gambling their lives away, hoping to hit that instant jackpot rather than put the work into an honest living. That is the lottery system that Nelly makes a living selling tickets for. And the damage is not just limited to the people who are playing the game. These systems of value reach through things like social media, infecting all of our minds, whispering low value into our ears, fueling our entitlement and need for validation, and eroding all of our relationships with comparison, including our relationships with ourselves. And I know how coaches like Nelly love to rattle off the stats about dating apps and dating market value, but here's a few other stats for you all to digest. Most millionaires don't make their first million until after 50 years old. Another fun fact is that over 86% of millionaires are married, more than half of which are still in their first marriage. This means most people who retire wealthy got married before getting wealthy and then built wealth alongside their partner. Yes, economic hardship has changed the landscape dramatically since the 90s, but the principles of teamwork still function as the optimal path to success. Statistically, when it comes to wealth, you have a better chance at seeking a partner of good character, getting married, and building that wealth together than you are trying to play high-value bingo. I think it will be fitting to leave you with one last clip from that interview that really drives home where this road we are currently on is heading, and it is not pretty. Of course, I'll leave a link to the whole video in the description. Share your thoughts in the comments, whether you agree or disagree with what I have said, and don't forget to subscribe.
The studies support that we are becoming more disconnected, men and women, from each other. And studies show that 30% of men under 30 have been celibate, not because of their choosing, for the past year, and that 50% of women by 2030, between the ages of 22 and 45, so prime kind of childbearing years, if you will be single and childless, many of whom not by choice. And by, currently actually, 50% of women who are 30 and up do not have children. Now, not every woman wants children, and there are going to be a lot of people who comment and say, why is being a mother associated with being basically like a fulfilled woman? It's not, if that's not what you want. But,
well, it fulfills about 90% of women across the board. There's a very, very few percent of women where it doesn't, but we're not going to get into that because that's not how you actually say something true. Because
most women I coach who are still in their childbearing years, not all, but most, do want children. So, and I have some clients who don't, by the way, and that's fine. I have friends who don't, fine. That is their life, that is their journey. I'm not here to judge.
It's really unfortunate. I've talked to a lot of women who said that they didn't, and then on the second session started crying, being like, I can't believe I've lied to myself all these years. And so you have to be able to, not to say push an agenda, but you have to be able to get people to be honest with themselves about some of the most primal urges we all have as human beings. And so I wanted to be able to talk about this. And it's like, this is why this conversation I had with you is very hot. You judge a tree by its fruit. The fruit right now is not looking really good. We got to make sure we go back down to the roots that actually have allowed people to grow beyond that to create good fruit. So when you brought up that statistic, what came to mind was, oh shit, if we really don't start leveling up and asking deeper questions about ourselves and what our intentions and motives are, and perhaps maybe even question the integrity of what we want, not only will we start to see how much our brothers and sisters begin to suffer, you're going to see the whole world begin to decline. And remember this, those who have children are going to experience something that is completely and totally devastating. So we have to do something about that. I don't think it's a small thing. I think it's a big deal. I think it's actually such a big deal.
I didn't say it was a small thing.
Huh?
I never said it was a small thing.
No, it's not a small thing. And I do believe that there's an importance to be able to have these conversations.
Yeah, we're at a fork in the road. And I think people need to start thinking about what is at stake. And here's what I'll say, and I'm not saying that this is something I wholeheartedly stand by, but the sentiment I hear from a lot of women is that it is men's fault because a lot of the men are...
Tell me how it's working out for them.
Well, they're listening to red pill content, right? And so they're engaging in this Peter Pan lifestyle. they're not necessarily motivated all the time. Some men for sure want to have children, but I would say, per your point earlier, it is disproportionately skewed toward women. A lot of the men I work with do want children, but there are also a lot more that I hear from than women who are like, if I don't have kids, I'm okay. I got money. I want a hot girl by my arm. And I hear this more from women. And